Hi, I'm just back from seeing Francis Ford Coppola's Megalopolis. Um, it's a film with a lot of background and a lot of history. Coppola is, of course, the director of Godfather trilogy, Apocalypse Now, The Conversation, Bram Stoker's Dracula. He fell out of making movies in the late 90s, having basically spent the previous 15 years trying to pay off debts he'd incurred from the disastrous 1983 film One for the Heart. He made a slight comeback with three films during the 2000s, early 2010s, and finally this year released Megalopolis, his dream project he's been working on for 40 years, an epic inspired by ancient Rome transposed into the modern day about the conflict between tradition and innovation, with a fellow named Caesar Catalina, played by Adam Driver, planning to build a new utopian city in New Rome, effectively in New York, from a miracle substance called megalon, for which he's won the Nobel Prize after his discovery. It can do anything. You can build things out of it. You can reconstruct human skulls. You can make casts out of it that heal legs twice as fast. It washes whiter. It tastes delicious. But he runs into conflict with the mayor of New York, a widely hated figure called Cicero, played by Giancarlo Esposito. Caesar also starts a relationship with Cicero's daughter. He also has family connections to Crassus, the world's richest man, played by John Voight, whose nephew, played by Shia LaBeouf, who is absolutely crazy, is riven by jealousy for Caesar and wants to destroy him. And there's also a relationship with a TV personality called Wow Platinum, played by Aubrey Plaza, who's basically playing April from Parks and Recreation again, and even shouts at someone off screen called Jerry at one point. It's a massive, massive enterprise. It's a $120 million movie. Reviews have been incredibly divisive, and it's fascinating. It's not a great film. It has a lot of problems, but it's also far from any kind of disaster. It's fascinating because Coppola sold off personal assets, his winery business, to fund a $120 million budget to make the movie exactly how he had it in his head, exactly how he's been developing it for 40 years. And the result is something totally uncompromised, totally unfiltered. Fuck you, he's saying. This is what I want to say. I've got some points I want to make. And the result is something completely unrestrained, completely over the top. It is very experimental in its presentation and its styling. There is a scene in some exhibited versions, not in the one that I saw, where Caesar is having a press conference and there will be a physical person in the auditorium who asks him a question and he will reply. They get around that in the version that I saw because it's not happening everywhere. It's obviously not going to happen on the home video version. Although maybe you'll get a script and you can chime in yourself. You can play along with the movie. There's scenes of triptychs, there's editing, there's scenes of dream sequences and multi-layer images and all kinds of very experimental visual stylizations. I have to look at my notes at this point because there's a lot to say about this movie. There's a lot of very blunt philosophizing, quoting Marcus Aurelius and Shakespeare, and everyone is playing it to the back row of the theatre. Adam Driver is very eccentric. He's playing it a lot of the time as though it's a Saturday Night Live sketch. He's terrific in Saturday Night Live and shows off he has genuine comic talent that capitalizes on his very intense persona. But the weirdness and the stylization of the movie means that everything is so much more heightened, everything is so much more exaggerated. There's very unsubtle satire on the end of the American Empire and the way that there is this conflict between old and new. And it should be a massive artistic failure because it is so self-indulgent and so extreme and so stylized and so expensive. But it works on its own terms because it feels like it has a thesis that Coppola is struggling to fully express. That there's been so much collaboration with others over the course of the production, that it's had so long to cogitate inside his own mind, that the basic core thread of it has kind of got away from him a little bit over the years. It's far from bad. It is a long way from some of the 90s direct. He was doing Jack is abominable. The Rainmaker was a film that he clearly didn't give a toss about and is just doing it for the money. This feels a lot more like something like Apocalypse Now or Bram Stoker's Dracula, where he's trying to innovate, he's trying to do something original, trying to push the boundaries of what film can be. Even, he's 85 years old and he's still trying to innovate. And I think on those terms, it's a successful work for a very creative mind. Does it work all the way through? No, of course it doesn't. It's so over the top, it's so extreme, it's so exaggerated, it's billed as a fable, and it a lot of the time loses any real connection with reality. I think after about half an hour, I was smiling because it was so bizarre and so absurd. But I was buying into it. I was happy to go along with it because I knew that there's something crazy going along here, and you don't see this crazy this big on a movie screen. You don't get to see $120 million being sunk into a passion project that then gets released in IMAX and is this wacky. This is something special. One way or the other, this is unique. It's worth seeing just so that you can see it and make up your own mind. Is it a masterpiece? No, it's not. I maintain that Coppola's best film is still The Conversation, which is incredibly small scale and focused and very realistic. But it's absolutely the pouring out of an entire career, the sum total of Coppola's feelings on politics, on philosophy, on the future of art and culture and the human race. It is a summation of his entire being. I described it to friends as it's Coppola's 2001. It is something that will lend itself to interpretation and picking apart and multiple readings and examinations over decades to come. It's a fascinating film. And if it's this interesting and this idiosyncratic and this personal, whether or not it's good no longer matters.